What's a place that seems fine during the day but gets really creepy at night? Used to do security work for a company that has stores in malls. Being in a mall late at night by yourself is super creepy. The only noise you hear down the way is the kiddie area rides laughing. I used to work for a state medical examiner's office. I worked second shift with some occasional overnights, and we relatively often had to take trips to either or the satellite offices, which were approximately 1 to 1.5 hours away from the HQ office in the state capital, one of which was particularly desolate, set back in the woods, and pretty remote. Let me tell you, no matter how often you go there, or how comfortable you are doing that type of job, being in a morgue, alone, at 0317 in the morning during a ridiculous thunderstorm is spooky. The wind is knocking trees' branches against the autopsy room windows, the primary lights are turned off so the office is dimly lit except for the red glow of the exit signs. You pull up to the garage doors and there is one measly light barely illuminating the end of the driveway, no other lights around, surrounded by woods, lightning occasionally lighting up the area just enough to get a glimpse of your surroundings before it goes dark again. You can't tell whether or not the wind is blowing the trees or there is a coyote or something out there, all while you're trying to keep your garbage in your butt while struggling to get a 320-pound cadaver out of the back of your truck without the stretcher falling over. Not to mention it's the summer, so the fog gets pretty thick with the cold rain on the warm ground. And #X200B, TLDR, working in a morgue, alone, during a massive thunderstorm. Our barn, I can go in there during the day without lights and it's fine, it's pitch black. But at night? Nope. The hallway that lead to my parents' room when I was a kid. An unlit swimming pool. I live right next to a disused airfield. It's a square kilometer of completely clear, flat land and is really unnerving. There's also the control tower in the center that gets extremely spooky at night. The only way in is to scale the wall and then lower yourself in from the roof through an upstairs window. I should also say that I live in the north of Scotland, where flat land is pretty uncommon at it. A lot of people have asked for pictures and I will try my best to get some. However, there is a very aggressive flock of birds nesting on the control tower, so I DK how close I can get. My basement. Dirt roads. I grew up on one and would walk it to get to the main road to catch the bus for school. I'd have to walk it at night to babysit my neighbor's kids, and the difference was crazy. During the day it's bright, there are flowers, and the worst you'll see is a snake or a deer. At night the roar of the frogs is deafening, the trees seem to encroach on the road and you catch glowing eyes in the woods around you. A school. Service stations, rest stops. Fine in the day, but I've been in a few 24-hour ones way out in the middle of nowhere at night where I'm literally the only car in the lot, and all the lowlights are on and the staff is a skeleton crew mostly in the back doing stock. I remember standing in one huge rest stop once and it was just me and this creepy arcade music playing. It felt like I was the only person left alive after some apocalypse. I work midnights at my local hospital and end up in the rooms a lot. I help prep for the next day's surgeries, totally creepy. Cliché, but a cemetery, going to mourn your loved ones during the day, going to desecrate a grave at night. A room with lots of big windows and no blinds, only small translucent curtains. Nursing home. I didn't believe in ghosts until I worked at one. A recently divorced uncle's house with an unkempt lawn and a 1992 Saturn sedan that's missing half of the rear bumper parked in front. Abandoned buildings, churches. Theme park. Hospitals. It's normal by day, but after visiting hours garbage gets creepy. A toy store, rows upon rows of stuffed animals, dolls and action figures, all staring at you in the dark with their dead eyes, right up until the doll you're looking at turns her head and winks at you. Literally anywhere that isn't lit up. My apartment, after the lights go out the roaches get to have their fun. Turns out getting used to falling asleep to the sounds of constant skittering and the weird noises they make when they rub against garbage is tough. Any room my cat is in. Anywhere in Milwaukee. I work late nights and the city is 1000% creepy at night, 500,000 people spread over almost 100 miles, and you're lucky to see a single sober person. If you're unlucky, you run into a Milwaukee crackhead and boy there's something else. The woods. Sketchy hotels. Malls. I worked at a shop in a pretty busy mall in California and was there overnight doing stock inventory. I had to leave the shop to throw some trash away, and walking the mall in almost complete silence was terrifying. Any place with tremendous amounts of energy during the day and nearly none at night are creepy. Museums. My school is in an area where hookers, ya know. A 9-to-5 office. I've had to stay behind at my school a few times, usually being one of maybe a dozen or so others by the time I leave. My foster carers always pick me up in a weird area that leaves me walking through different hallways than everyone else, and it never fails to scare me, walking through hallways that are only illuminated by fire exit signs and should have crowds of Year 7s screaming but are dead silent. The woods, playgrounds. There's a playground near me that's actually built on the foundations of a tuberculosis sanatorium. My son loves it during the day, but at dusk we skedaddle. Parks probably. Hallways. Any place that is pretty empty at night. If something happens, no one's around to save you. Oh. A graveyard. I had a lot of friends growing up that would love to walk through graveyards late at night. I never joined them because I have seen enough horror movies to know what happens to the carefree teens walking through cemeteries late at night. Old church. I find the opposite effect in nightclubs. At night they are exciting, loud, music blaring, lights flashing, packed with happy people, but during the day, when the lights are on, the walls are beat up black painted plywood, the floors are just black concrete with sticky drink stains everywhere, exposed lights, etc. They look really sketchy, and they do not make you want to come back at night. This will probably get buried, but rest stops. One of the eeriest places I've ever been is a small rest stop way out in the middle of nowhere in far southeastern Oregon. It was about midnight, and in the middle of nowhere, just flat desert, just sand and some low brush. If you've ever been out by Plush, Oregon, you know what I mean. We were driving down this highway, the only main road for miles, and everything was pitch black. You couldn't see anything out the windows, just pitch black. All we could see was the patch of road in front of us illuminated by the headlights, and the occasional suicidal jackrabbit. Finally, we came to a small crossroads with a little building and a parking lot next to it. Nothing else, just one building. We parked and got out, and everything was dead silent. No birds, no animals, no wind, nothing. The surroundings were, again, pitch black, and yet at the same time the sky was clear enough to see thousands of stars. Everything felt so dead and abandoned, just you and a broken down rest stop alone in the middle of a pitch black, dead silent desert. It was pretty creepy, but kind of beautiful at the same time. An Atacone bare, cobweb-covered light bulb and plenty of shadows. Abandoned prisons. Reddit. Antique shops and second-hand stores. I was the only kid who would work for extra money at my aunt's antique shop after hours, dusting and straightening up and refurbishing the items that came in. It didn't help it was an old building from the 1800s too. Thumps, whispering, and shadows were normal. Whenever she got in new stock, new things started happening. I was weird and loved it. All my cousins were chickens. A shopping mall. I used to work third shift security at a pretty understaffed one, so I was regularly the only person in the building from around 2 a.m. to 7 a.m. after the janitors left, besides the occasional teenager wearing a clown mask and staring at me through a window. I thought I saw mannequins moving, heard small children laughing, heard banging coming from the ceiling, etc. Churches. I used to work at this really old church in my city, and I hated locking up after weddings because I just got this really uneasy feeling when I was in there by myself at night. It might be low-hanging fruit here, but theaters. Acting theaters, not movie theaters. For a while I was helping closing up our big local old theater. There's just no way to not assume that place is absolutely haunted. Cement basement hallways. Even if it wasn't dark outside yet, I just knew there were ghosts all around me. Pretty sure no one was ever murdered there, but somehow that place is definitely haunted. Any kind of dock by the water, beautiful during the day, nightmare at night. Portland. Seriously, I'd walk around as a kid downtown when I was 12 or 13 and take the MAX train down there, essentially an electric-powered train on cables, and everything was cool in the daylight hours. It's like a switch gets flipped in that city, even in what seem like regular neighborhoods during the day. All of a sudden all the folks selling delicious food truck wares suddenly act aggressive, and people you saw singing or joking with passing folk on the streets are now shifty and inspire a panic unlike many others I have experienced in life. And #X200B, and if you ride the bus, there a night and day difference in the populace taking the bus in the middle of the day, and those taking it after 5 p.m. It's crazy because I used public transit a majority of my life and was so comfortable with people that I could sleep on a bus during the daylight hours and even nighttime hours in other cities, but in Portland, the Keep Portland Weird mantra feels more like don't get shanked and keep your hands on your valuables. Edit 1, oops, I meant, at night. A playground. A field with a scarecrow in it. I'm a nightmare weaver, Martha. I was watching a video of an urban tour of Pripyat, the city built to support the Chernobyl plant. At day, it was fascinating walking through now empty high-rises. At night though, very different story, the hotels there for tourists having locked gates that close at nightfall. I would not want to be on the outside when they lock. Still on my bucket list those smiley face.